hard, right? Like when you mention having made these decisions throughout your childhood out of survival, right? I think that ties into like people are always talking about how children and women especially are so resilient, right? And in my mind, resilience is one of those things that's like built out of the need to survive something you shouldn't have, right? And when we praise resilience, we're really praising this like survival. And so, creating separation, but also like
Hey, welcome back to The Release. I'm your host, Dr. Tafona Ervin, and boy, do we have a treat for you today. I'm so excited to be sitting on the couch today with a friend, a daughter, a mother, sister, a wife, but also, guys, a certified mental health therapist. We are about to get into something exciting because I tell you all to skip the fluff, dive into the mess, and debate what your traditional therapist tells you. But we're going to hear a little bit about what the professional has to say. So sit back, get ready, and step into your vulnerability, because today it's really about focusing in on how we better make decisions for ourselves so that we can be better for tomorrow. So let's dive right into it. Welcome, Say.
Thank you.
So glad you're here.
Thank you.
For folks who don't know, Say has been a longtime friend. We've had a very interesting friendship grow between ourselves, but then also our husbands. And yet we have still found a way to maintain connection and maintain just a checking in with one another, which I really appreciate and value. I also think it's important to note, I don't think I've ever told you this, but you and your good friend Jillian are actually an influence or a spark for me betting on myself and doing this podcast.
Oh, good for you.
And or writing the book and or just stepping out and saying like, I can do something as well, because you all opened up a bridal shop. And I remember when you were telling me this, I was just in awe and so proud and like, oh my gosh, look at you. You're out here getting out of the 9-to-5 rat race and you're going to go out and do something amazing. I'm like, why can't I do that myself? And so I held on to that a little bit, and it has become a little bit of the fuel that got me here today. So I just want to say thank you.
Of course.
Yeah.
I think anytime that like our own actions can be inspiring to others, it's a beautiful thing.
It is. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's so good. So today we're talking about discernment. This is the skill of making sound decisions based on what we understand around us that are often complex or very complicated. And we use that to ensure our own safety and protection in many ways. I speak of discernment in multiple ways because I think unconsciously I was practicing discernment at a very young age. I had to make really quick and swift decisions about how do I engage in this really toxic environment of my life? How do I try to find just comfort or safety around me, knowing that the people who are around me were not safe, not comforting. And I found myself constantly making what I believed were sound decisions really for survival. I was making decisions because I wanted to live another day, right? And as I've gotten older, I'm now in my 40s, but I think it was my 30s that I recognized that I was doing that out of survival mode, but now I'm in a place of wanting to do something that's really focused on my happiness, my liberation, my own prosperity. And that meant more consciously thinking about how I'm making decisions, not to survive, but to thrive. And I got to tell you, it's such a revelation and like an eye-opening. And I think a lot of us, especially in our mid 30s, 40s, we're beginning to kind of pick up on that as well and say like, am I really doing this because I have to, I need to, or I want to? And so these are going to be some things that we're going to talk about today. And I'm really excited. I want to kind of jump in first and just say, who is Say? Like, who are you? Tell us a little bit about how you've arrived to this current place as a professional mental health therapist. And tell us a little bit about, your own maybe journey around discernment.
Yeah. I mean, I am, like you mentioned, I'm a psychotherapist based here in Washington. I see clients across 4 states. So Washington, California, Idaho, and New York.
Hey, if you're looking for a therapist.
Yeah, I think that I was like meant to be a therapist, right? I was always sort of this listening ear for friends and family, and it just felt like this really natural fit.
Yeah.
And when I think about how I got here, and I think about how most therapists find themselves here, they too were like in these spaces where parts or pieces of their childhood were spaces in which they had to survive something that was really hard, right? Like when you mention having made these decisions throughout your childhood out of survival, right? I think that ties into like people are always talking about how children and women especially are so resilient, right? And in my mind, resilience is one of those things that's like built out of the need to survive something you shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Right. And when we praise resilience, we're really praising this like survival. And so, creating separation, but also like acknowledgement that was your experience, I think is so important. Professionally, obviously, someone who is there to walk alongside people in this journey of, finding their own truth.
Yeah.
Personally, like you mentioned, friend, daughter, sister, mother, wife, all of those things. But more importantly, someone who has had to do a lot of work to find their own truth, to cut through the noise of what, society or culture or family tells me I'm supposed to be or I should be. Yeah. And really finding out who I am by listening to the voice inside.
I really appreciate you saying, both as someone who's gone through the journey, but also a therapist, that we should not praise resilience. I was having this conversation with someone who was trying to help me think about my brand. And they were like, "Oh, you're so resilient. Like you need to like really step into that." I'm like, I don't actually,
bit, right?
Like I didn't want to be resilient. Like I didn't want to have to go through all of the traumas that I went through and then come on the other side to talk about it.
Exactly.
But, and I've been thinking about that. And I think you're right. I think that there, especially for Black women and people of color who have had so many compounding challenges against them, you get in these boardrooms, or you get in front of these donors, or you get in front of people who really can decide your future, particularly professionally. And they love to talk about how articulate and how resilient you are. And I'm just like, God, what a slap in the face. Because I think I'm so much more than that. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
I also think that there is something about acknowledging and interrogating how we've actually gotten here, and really cutting through that noise and getting and discerning our truth from our trauma, because so much of what we do is kind of routine. We've become habitual in our practices. We've been conditioned to show up the way we show up. We've been conditioned to believe like, well, I guess I have to put on my resilient big girl underwear and like get after it. But there's a softer side of all of us that deserves to be just who we are.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I'm beginning to step into that. Like I'm beginning to say, like, I just don't want to. I want to just not feel the pressures or the expectations. I want to kind of just be like, floating through freaking rivers of happiness with mimosas and sun. Like, gosh, my dreams. I'm almost there. But I bring that up because I think you started to allude to it. You said, many therapists find themselves in this field because of their own journeys and experiences. And then they come out the other side of it. And you mentioned that early on, you had to like really kind of figure that out. Like, what were some like discerning moments that you think were really critical in how you show up today?
Yeah, I think that some of this has to come from like really confronting these experiences of our past. And, I think a lot of times people look at trauma, especially as like the things that happened to you. And sometimes the trauma lies in what didn't happen, right? What you didn't have, what you didn't get, and what you needed. And so, I've been thinking a lot about my childhood, partially just didn't work with like my own therapist.
Oh, you're a therapist that sees a therapist?
I'm a therapist.
Wow. Okay.
Most of us are.
Okay,
and, I stand in the camp of like, you should have had that experience as the client in order to best serve the clients that you see. So strong advocate for everyone to experience, the process that is therapy. But yeah, I've been thinking a lot about my childhood as of late. And that may stem from the fact that I just went home a couple months ago and I hadn't gone home. I think I've been home like 5 times since I left at 18. So a lot of things sort of came back to me at that point. But, thinking about sort of figuring out where my truth lies, I think that it's really, or it can be really painful to like examine these experiences that you had whenever in that moment you were like, I was okay, right? Like I survived. But then looking at like how those experiences have sort of shaped how you've lived, your entire life, right? I think that, there's this one experience that I had probably, I don't know, in first grade where it like led to this internalized belief that my value was tied to being useful to someone else. Yeah. Right. And because of that, it, impacted the way that I showed up all the time. It turned me into this sort of habitual people pleaser, right? Where I was constantly saying yes, because I had experienced at like age 7 or 8, some adult feeling really disappointed by a decision that I made, right? And it was something silly, right? It was literally like these 2 parents and both of them wanted me to play on their basketball team. And I chose one parent over the other, right? Just one team over the other. But I experienced this other parent's disappointment in me. And I was like, I never want to feel that again. Yeah. Right. I never want my decision to cause someone else to feel disappointed. And, I would say up until like the last 5 or 10 years, I was constantly saying yes to things that like I knew I wanted to say no to, right? Like even something as simple as like, do you want to grab drinks after work? It was like, no, not really. I want to go home. Yeah. But if I say no, what will happen to this relationship? Right? Like, is this person going to be mad at me? Like, can the relationship sustain like me prioritizing myself? And so really, the art of practicing saying no over the last, like I said, 5 to 10 years is one of those things that's really contributed to like, relearning that I could be useful and loved and valued even in moments when I was prioritizing myself. Yeah.
So I'm resonating a lot. So 2 things come up. Yesterday, I don't know if I've shared yet here, but my daughter has chronic migraines. Started at 3, and there are a lot of questions and things that go through your head about like, what did I do? What did the doctors do? What didn't they catch? All the things. Sure. But yesterday, the doctor asked like, Chanel, who do you want to go with you in the room? You can only have one. And I just knew she was going to choose me. Like, here I am, like massaging her head because she had a migraine also yesterday. I'm like doing all the things. And she was like, Daddy. And I was like, what? Really? Excuse me? And I was like, but to your point, I was like, don't make it a thing. She wants her dad. She needs this moment. Like, let her have that. But I went back and I was just like, how does she know all the things that but I'm like, okay. And I appreciate hearing that because that I wouldn't have realized could be a moment in her life. Because she is 6, going into the first grade, where she would feel disappointed in decisions that she made. And I don't want ever for that to happen. Sure. However, I also recall like that is a very interesting way of thinking or experience rather, because all of our experiences are different. I think part of this podcast is to help people realize like no one experience is the same. We all go through this journey of either trauma or disappointment in various ways, but it doesn't make your trauma or experience like more extreme or less extreme than mine, because hurt is hurt, pain is pain. And I've acknowledged that my pain that I have yet to fully evaluate because it's too painful. Sure. But there is something that happens when you start to unpack it a little bit and really like ask questions of like, what was going on then? How did it make you feel? Why is that still hurting today? What do you need to do about it right now? That does make it a little easier. It doesn't go away per se.
Sure.
You still kind of get the clammy hands or the teary eyes, but you're not as like, I used to be very like just stuck, couldn't say words or would retreat away. And I'm finding that that is actually hindering where I am today, right? Like I'm unable sometimes to make decisions because there's a trigger that came up that I haven't really dealt with.
Sure.
And that trigger is what I'm trying to do here with this podcast.
Yeah.
But you talk about this need to kind of evaluate, and I characterize it as like interrogating, because like sometimes I think we need to like really get after it and just say like, okay, face to face, you against you, like start talking. What is going on that you can't really deal with today? And I think it's in the questions that we ask ourselves. So I'm curious, like put it on your mental health therapist hat. Like, what are questions that we should be asking ourselves that maybe we are afraid to ask?
Sure. I mean, I think the biggest thing with, discerning our truth from that of, the opinions or, expectations that other people have on us, like the best thing that we can do is like take pause and listen, right? To like listen to the voice, right? That is telling you need to do one thing over the other. And listen to the tone, listen to the volume at which it speaks, right? Because I think that trauma tends to shout, right? And to rush us and to shame us, where culture tends to sort of persuade us to do something. And truth is this sort of calm voice, right? That like, you can feel confident about even in like the sea of uncertainty. I think the biggest question that you can ask yourself is, whose voice is this? Ooh, right? Like that's a question that I ask my clients a lot, right? It's a question that I ask myself whenever I'm feeling this like pressure to show up a certain way. Whose voice is this, right? Like whose need am I trying to meet here? Is it my voice, right? Does this serve me? And if it doesn't, whose is it? Like, whose agenda is this? And I think that if you're able to ask yourself that question and to honestly answer it, right, then you really end up finding yourself in this space of making decisions because of the decisions that you want to make, as opposed to the decisions that you think you should, based on the opinions of other people.
Yeah, I often say that actually this process is about being honest with yourself. And we say that kind of like casually. Sure. But I think being honest with ourselves is probably, at least for me, the hardest thing to do. Sure. Because I've actually lied to myself for so many years, right?
It's comfort.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, and the lie was being that people pleaser. The lie was to say like, I have to actually do this for this person in order for me to be of value, or I have to sacrifice my own need in this moment in order for this to benefit. And that voice was never my voice. It was the voices of other. That was almost a culmination in order for, and it kind of, I do a little bit of like balancing, like how much of that voice makes sense or how many of those voices make sense. And if there's a lot of them, although I would say pause, I feel like, back in the day, therapists would say, if you were hearing voices in your head, you should be committed. So I don't know. But I hear you about, there is something, about listening to ourselves more. Yeah. There's almost that gut feeling. Like, you have that gut feeling, like that's yourself talking to yourself, but you often don't listen because you hear the world around you. Sure. And I think the world around us is very persuasive. You said it very
it's everywhere.
Yeah. Every, like, whether it's a magazine cover telling you need to look this way, or if it's a marketing campaign that says you need this product, like it's all around us and we get so lost in that. I was talking to one of my kids recently about like how marketing works, and like they're trying just to get you to buy a product, but you think it's the best thing because the way that they messaged it. And I'm like, actually, no, it's the worst thing. Like, what are we talking about here? I'm like, oh, you don't know anything. I'm like, no, I don't have billions of dollars to put my message out there.
Yeah.
But I think that there's something really powerful about that. I also think what you're describing about honesty with yourself, and I've shared this example several times. I had to do this activity, or not had to, I chose to do this activity. And it really was about these two faces of who Tafona is. One that everyone sees, expects, and knows, and the one that no one like understands or has ever explored or gotten to meet because she hides that self. And I think that that was the first time that I ever was really honest with myself. And girl, I ugly cried when I did this. And I actually was at a spa enjoying myself. And there's a bunch of women who were just, you know, la, la, la. And I'm like,
having a moment.
And, you know, the eyes were looking, but I could care less at that moment. It was the first time that I did not care about what anybody had to say. I needed to release that.
Yeah. Good for
and
you.
ever since then, I've been trying to kind of step into that.
Yeah.
I wonder for you, like, what are moments that we should be taking stock in and really be listening not only to ourselves, but helping us to mentally process like the moments that we're in, so we don't continue to compound these traumas or experiences that aren't serving us.
Sure. I mean, I think, you know, I want to go back just a bit because like you had mentioned how hard it can be to like be honest with ourselves. And I think one of the most important things that people can do when it comes to like being honest with themselves is to acknowledge that like this honesty does not have to require action in this moment, right? That like I can be honest with myself about something not working or about not liking something, and I don't have to in that moment or in one that soon follows, right? Do anything to change it. Yeah. Right? Like we are talking about deconstructing years of like conditioning, right? This idea or pressure that we put on ourselves to like, well, now I know that this isn't how I feel. I have to do something. No, you don't. No, you don't.
Yeah.
Right?
Because
like,
there's no rush, right? Yeah.
The healing is this sort of, it is a process, right? Like it is, we don't know like the timeline at which it's going to happen. And you know, the best thing that we can do is be really gentle and patient with ourselves, right? To say like, here's this thing that I know to be true, and I'm not quite ready to like create this big interruption in my life, right? In order to stand in that truth. So I'm just going to leave this over here, knowing that like when I'm ready, I can revisit it. So anyway, I know that I just like sidetracked us there.
No,
now
I think
what you asked me
that's
before,
okay. I think that that's beautiful. So a couple things. This journey, I say, at least for me, it's an unconventional path toward healing. That I may not be practicing all of the latest or even longstanding, you know, therapy, like prescribed tools or practices to get there. And I've tried therapy a little bit. I should probably go back. But I also have found like there are things that, to your point, I want to actually sit in for a minute. And I don't want to have to come back in 2 weeks and say like what I did or didn't do to actually do that thing. Because I'm still processing. And my processing time is a lot longer than a lot of other people's.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Thank you.
Right? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I think people have this idea that like healing looks like something. And it can look like whatever you want it to look like. Right? Like when we're in this space where like, I'm healing unconventionally. Like who set that standard for you for what healing looked like? Right?
Well, I think therapists did, but you know, that, no shade.
Here's the thing. Like, you know, when this, I think therapists did, right? Like one of the questions that I always ask my clients in our very first session is how they'll know when therapy or when our time together has served its purpose. How will they know when they're done? Right. And sometimes I would get these questions or these like responses like, I won't feel sad anymore or things won't hurt anymore. Right. And before I did my own work, I too thought that like healing was arriving at some sort of destination, right? Like, I would get there and I wouldn't feel these things anymore. Right. But like the biggest thing is healing is less about eliminating pain, right? And more about expanding our capacity to meet it without abandoning who we are to do so. Right. And so like, whatever that means for you, whether that means that like, I'm going to sit with this for weeks or years, like that's fine.
Yeah. I think that there's something really beautiful about that. And I'm actually taking in this moment in this lesson. So one, I have many unfortunate triggers in my life.
Sure.
But there's one where anytime I hear like very loud shuffling, banging, or bumping, the trigger for me is I go back to my mom was in some domestic violent situation, or my uncles or men who had no business being in our home or fighting. It always resulted in something physically and violent, always. And I have over the years, like, felt this really just painful, sharp likeness in my chest of like, oh my gosh, it's happening, right? Even though I know, like in my home, oh, my daughter's like playing with her doll, something fell, or my boys are shuffling, or maybe, you know, the boys are fighting, but not like that. And I keep telling myself, because even at this age, so many years far removed, never going back to those type of situations, I can't get over that. Like it vividly comes back. Like I can see it every single time I hear something like that. And to your point about like, when will I know that I've arrived to this place? I often tell myself, which is why I use the term unconventional, I don't know that I will. I feel like I will always see that. I will always feel that.
Sure.
Does it feel a little less sharp? Maybe. But are there moments when it is very sharp? I drove past, this was years ago, but I remember driving past a street and some man was like physically shuffling his girl or whomever he was with. I was like, you effing coward. Like, how dare you? I'm calling the cops. I love to call the cops, by the way. I don't know what it is, but I dialed 911 more than anybody. Oh my gosh, I just saw something that said, you better get here right now. I'm sorry if it was you and I got you there, but I will have to say, like, there is something now that I'm stepping into that can like even speak it, right?
Yeah, sure.
And share that this was a trauma that I went through, and it hurts. It really, really hurts. And I've worked really hard at this age to say, like, how do I like deal with this moment that I'm in? And I'm finding myself talking to myself or processing with myself and saying like, yeah, come on, what is, that this is not something harmful right now, but what do you do in this moment? And that is kind of, when I think about unconventional, I think about like, there are tools that says, breathe in, 2, 3, breathe out, 5, 6, right? And sure, that works. And I find myself needing to like actually sit down and like be in silence and really just like recalibrate like the senses in my body, like the anxiety that was building up, like really calming it down. Like, and I'm finding my own way of trying to deal, but that's not going to work for everyone, right? Because everyone has their own path. So kind of going back to like that question of like, what do people need to do to take stock in like their moments besides like listening to themselves? What else do we need to be thinking about as we journey, not only towards healing, but really practicing discernment? Because I think if people more consciously understand what they're actually deciding in moments and using sound judgment to do that, they would actually be much better off than if they were making a decision for survival, like what we talked about earlier. But what more can people be thinking about or doing to kind of use discernment as a real practice or tool?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things is like the identification of feeling. Right? Like we don't often think about our feelings as like these physical experiences, but they are, right? Like when you mention like, I hear this really loud noise and like my heart starts to race really fast, or like that's fear, right? And it's like, that you're safe in this moment now, but like the physicality of that fear is still really present, right? And so finding ways to like get in touch with your experience versus what other people assume you might be feeling or experiencing, I think is key there. But when we're in this space of practicing discernment, we really have to work to like drown out the noise, right? Like it is everywhere. You mentioned like magazine covers and social media and this and that, like it is everywhere.
Yeah.
And so, acknowledging that, right? Acknowledging when we are feeling these external pressures to like live our life a certain way or make a certain decision, like to challenge that, like I said earlier, really whose agenda am I following by trying to make this decision? I think that, sometimes we tend to like overcomplicate things, right? Because it feels so big and so scary. When really like the act of practicing this is something that's relatively simple when you say it out loud, right? It's really to tone down everything that's happening around us and to get in touch with ourselves and the experience that we're having in the moment.
I love that.
Yeah.
So this idea or concept of drowning out the noise, really trying to discern truth from what everyone else around us is telling us we should or shouldn't be thinking about. I want to kind of dive into that a little bit.
Sure.
Because I think with age, with experience, and with just life, right? We gain wisdom. And in that wisdom, we are not as immature to make brash decisions because of social pressures per se, but we still very much have that in the back of our minds. We actually begin to make more decisions, I think, that are serving us, but we don't consciously think about it in that way because like that's how we're operated. We just kind of learn and become more conditioned to do that. But there are times in which we find ourselves stuck, unable to actually make decisions. And we find that decisions that we're trying to make are probably trying to serve someone else than to serve ourselves. And so then the noise starts to brew. Like, what will they think? What do they need? I love that you said, like, we don't have to actually act on a feeling, because I do think that no one's ever told me that before. Like, I've always believed, like, make a decision, hurry up, get to the next thing so you can move on. Like, that's
hustle culture.
Yeah, right? But there is something beautiful. Actually, I just experienced with my husband. He had said something and I just like, he's like, you're not going to say anything back? I'm processing.
I need a minute.
Yeah, I'm still processing. But in that processing, I'm thinking about all of the things and I'm trying to ask myself, like, what are the reasons I'm thinking of these things? And does it actually serve me? And in this current, like, era I'm in of like trying to prioritize myself because I am an individual before a wife, a mother, a friend, a colleague, etc. I'm trying to drown out that noise so that I can just make the decision or respond accordingly to what Tafona, am saying. So having that backdrop, thinking about your own experience, when was a time that you had to drown out the noise and make a decision that was in the best interest of Saysan?
Oh gosh, that's I think obviously it's still something that I struggle with. I think especially like, now with like the pressures of having young children and, wanting to like maintain, friendships, relationship with your partner, like want to be a good mom, don't want to like fuck them up.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I'm like wanting to make sure that like I am showing up for everyone all the time. Right. And we cannot do that.
Yeah.
Right. Like, when I think about the noise you mentioned earlier, like therapists talking about like, if you're hearing voices, that's not good. Right. But like one of those things is like our own voice, right? Like, or, the voice from individuals in our past. And so one of the things like that I find really helpful that I often share with clients is to name your brain. Right. So my brain's name is Judy. Don't ask me why. That's just what her name is.
She got a big booty too?
Funny. And anytime that like the noise gets too loud, right? Like I politely, sometimes not so politely, tell Judy, I don't have time to do this with you right now. Right. I don't have time to like go down this rabbit hole of 100 what ifs, right? Or the opinions of all of these people.
Yep.
I don't have time today.
Yep.
Right. So right now I'm just going to do what I can do in this moment to like get through it.
Yeah.
Right. And if that means that I'm going to live in this space of denial for a little bit, okay.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not ready.
Yeah.
And so having, giving ourselves permission to take pause and to create separation from like what I should do according to whoever, and just sort of acting on what I want to do or what I need to do in this moment. I think can be helpful.
Yep. Yeah. What if paralysis is real?
It is. I mean, it is. And our brain does that because like its sole purpose is to protect us.
Yes.
Right. So everything's
Right.
scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
it always goes to like worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Right. Because
Yeah.
it's trying to protect us from like
Yeah.
feeling sad or feeling
Right.
disappointed or,
Yep.
or injuring ourselves or
Yep.
someone else. And so, you know, being in these spaces again, where if you don't have to make a decision in this moment, don't.
Yeah.
Right. Like if it is not life or death on whether or not you make the decision to do this or that, just give
Yeah.
yourself permission.
Yeah.
Right. Radical permission.
Yeah.
To do nothing.
Yeah.
Or to do everything. Right. Like you don't have to decide. So when I think about, you know, how people can drown out the noise, I would say radical permission.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Community that is going to support you in this space of something being really messy or really put together.
Yep.
Right. I think approaching things with, you know, compassion and curiosity as opposed to judgment is really helpful, whether it's I'm judging myself or I'm thinking about the judgment other people will cast on me for making this choice.
I'm going to braid in this intersection of leadership.
Sure.
Because in part, this podcast started with this like feeling like I am just not able to make a good decision as a leader. And what's at risk is like the lives of young people. And while that might seem extreme, the long-term effects are such life and death. But I find myself constantly thinking internally exactly what you just described. Like we don't have to rush to make a decision, but we've been cultured to make a decision or start something or advance a program or strategy so that we can say that we solved the world's problems. The reality is simple to me. We're not solving world's problems at all. And given the current climate and condition of the world, and especially the US, it will be more unlikely that we will even get further than where we were just 10 years ago because we are actually regressing significantly in a lot of the things. But there is this mindset that people have. And I bet it's because at the root of it, they believe like we have to protect our young people. We need to get them better off. But then when I really interrogate that more, do you really care about the young person or do you care about like meeting a workforce demand that will ultimately benefit your bottom line, that will make you even more rich than you need to be? Like, and this is where I need to name my brain and tell her, like, I need you to cut it out.
Chill.
Right? Because this is getting a little too far down the line. And while all that might be true, that's not what I can control. And one of the things that I'm starting to really step into is like, what can I control? What is it that I should be focusing on that's going to serve me in this moment and not get ahead of myself? And I got to tell you, that's a really hard thing because the inner Tafona would say, like, I'm actually a brilliant genius who probably could serve world's problems if I were given all of the resources of the world. But since no one's given me those resources yet, I will come back to what can I do right now? And I think it's taking a minute. So my organization right now and my professional work, we're taking a beat. And it's interesting to see and watch the opinions of others. They're like, oh my gosh, you're folding. You must have did something terrible. Or, oh, this is meant to be. You were never going to. Oh, I never even understood what was happening. Oh, all of these things. And it's like, like here I thought I had a lot of these allies and supporters. And I do. But I also find that I also have a lot of critics and like folks who were kind of maybe more on the adversarial side than not. And that actually is making me really take stock and think about, okay, then what do I do in this moment to really better myself and my organization to make forward decisions and forward progress to help young people so that they can thrive? And I think it's a very enlightening moment to be in. But it does require time. It requires stillness. It requires silence. Like we need to sit in the noise and then start to really make sense of it. And I got to tell you, I'm starting to make sense of it. Like I can actually see, right, or hear like what we should be thinking and doing. But before, with all of these inputs, it's been really hard. So continuing on this conversation of like drowning out the noise, right? Like when would you say it makes sense for someone to like say to their brain, like, this is a moment that you need to really be cutting through this noise because this noise is only paralyzing you
Mhm.
in whatever next step it's going to be for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I am someone who journals myself. And I encourage my clients to do that. It doesn't work for everyone.
Sure.
But a lot of times, like, I'll just sort of engage in like these brain dumps, right? Where it's like all of these things that I'm telling myself I need to do, or that, whether it's a to-do list or these opinions that I've sort of created that other people are going to have, like, I just write them down and then I sort of sift through them. Like, in this list, where do I have any control?
Yeah.
Right? Is there something that I can do to address this thing, or is there not?
Yeah.
And if there's not, I give myself permission to let that go.
Yeah.
Right? That, like, we tend to like put on these responsibilities. Like when you mentioned, like, if I had all the resources, like I could change the world. But what a tremendous responsibility to put on yourself, right?
Mhm.
To hold ourselves to these
Mhm.
standards that, like, I can do all of these things whenever, like, your existence, right? And the pieces, whether they are small or large in comparison, that you offer to like the field of education in your leadership roles, but like that's enough, right? But like
Mhm.
the goal doesn't have to be
Solve world's problems.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Like
Yeah.
that's just such a heavy burden to
Yeah.
bear. Right.
Yeah.
To like, I think, I sometimes experience that with my clients, right? Like I look at sometimes these things that they're coming in with and I'm like, that's so hard and so heavy. And
Yeah.
I know that I don't have the power or ability to like take that away from you. Right.
Yeah.
But like the conditioning that I, carry with me from my childhood says I should be able to fix this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I should be able to fix this for
Yep.
you. No, you
No.
can't fix human beings.
No. Humans are so complicated.
Yeah.
Like, I love us all, but we are very complicated, which leads me a little bit to, so the current state of our country is just a shit show.
It's a shit show. Dumpster fire.
Like, I don't know how else to say that.
That's bad.
And I was talking to my team recently about the things that, all the things. And one of the things that I said was, I think we haven't named it yet. One, we haven't even really processed the effects of the pandemic. We haven't fully sat in what that did to us,
Mhm.
how we responded, what came out of it. And here we are in this next iteration of trauma as a country.
Sure.
And so we're compounding a lot of these things. And what I think it's also resulting in, and I might be the only one who thinks this, but there's a brewing anxiousness that individuals are beginning to build up inside. And the anxiousness is built on, in my opinion, believing that the foot is going to drop at some point.
Sure.
And that foot being something very tragic,
Mhm.
very life-changing or altering. I think it's war.
Mhm.
I think that we're kind of pacifying right now, our existence by trying to hold on to moments of joy, trying to live in the moment with our families or do the experiences. But in the back of our heads, we know with one wrong decision or stupid response to something, it's going to evoke a war, and
Mhm.
we don't have control over that.
Mhm.
We're going to have to be put in a state of survival.
Sure.
How do I protect myself and my family? But nobody wants to deal with that, right? Because that's that what if, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's that. But I share that because I think anxiety is on the rise with all of us.
Absolutely.
And it's in different ways. For me, it might be this war, but for someone else, it might be the anxiety of not having an income because I'm losing my job.
Sure.
Or it might be not able to put my kids in school because whatever the things are. And I just wonder, are you seeing a rise in anxiety in the patients that you're seeing?
Sure.
And two, what would you advise people to begin to do about that? Because I don't like to think of myself as an anxious person. I think I'm a high functioning, high wired individual that
likes what we're calling it?
Yes, that likes to just do a lot of things. But because anxiousness to me also means you don't have you have a concern or a fear that something can't be right or done if you don't do or act. And I don't know that I fully embody that.
Okay.
I think that I just like to do things because I know it makes people around me happy, which is a people pleasing trait. I'm working on it. I am working on it. but that's how I've always been, right? From, early on until now. But so just about anxiety, let's go there. Like, are you seeing this rise?
Oh, 100%.
And
yeah, 100%. There's a reason that like generations coming up are called like the anxious generation.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like they have there's this constant comparison that's happening all the time. Like think about whenever we were in grade school and like if you needed to find something out, you had to like look up, get a dictionary or like a thesaurus. Do you kids even know what that is
no.
anymore? No? It's like anything they want, they can literally. Yeah, I mean, my kids are gonna be 6 and 4 soon, and they like ask Siri questions. Like, like everything is just right there all of the time. They're constantly being sold to. And I think because of that, like when we think about social media, initially it was this thing that was meant to create connection. Yeah. Right. And now it is this thing that just like fuels comparison. Yeah. At every turn. Yeah. Right. Like whether it's us, seeing some sort of influencer who is in fact real, or now, we're dealing with AI where it's like, there are these AI personalities that are like selling these lives that like lead you to this space of, I don't have enough. I'm not enough. I can't do enough. Yes. And that's dangerous. So absolutely. I'm seeing an increase in, my clients with their levels of anxiety. And I think a lot of that again stems from, I think most of my clients are high functioning people pleasers, right? Cut out the friend. But yeah, there is this constant pressure that either they or others put on themselves to perform all the time. And whenever you are feeling pressure to perform, like anxiety is part of that. Yeah. Right. So,
yeah, I think I said in a previous podcast, and you mentioned it today, like practicing no is a part of breaking that cycle of people pleasing. So again, I served as a people pleaser because I needed to really cement like my worth. Like I wasn't loved a lot as a child. I bounced around from home to home. Like the people I lived with could care less about like my existence because I was never theirs. And, I just thought like, okay, I've got to overly demonstrate my value or my worth of being here so that people wouldn't discard me and I would end up in the streets or something like that. Sure. And that carried me forward, right? Because then pleasing, whether it's been the people around me, to have friends, I joke with a lot of people, but I have a very eclectic group of people in my life. And as I'm getting older, you're starting to see that kind of like shrink down because you're getting a little bit more focused in that. But a lot of it has been built on like, I offered or added something to the circle. And so wanting to, but then realizing, does that always reciprocate? Like, am I getting the same thing back? And if I'm not, like, then should I? Because it doesn't feel worth it, right? Like, and time is so valuable. We don't realize it. We don't really, especially when we're younger, we're just like, oh, time is like infinite. We have it. But as you get older, you realize like I have a friend who says, people are waking up dead and they never died before. And I'm like, yeah, like I just had a college friend who passed away suddenly. Like, how does that happen? Like, you think you have all this time, he's just building a family, doing all the things, and now he's gone. And, I look at myself and my husband, my kids, I'm like, we've got to value this time. And that means I've got to say no to the things that aren't serving me or us. And I've got to figure out, how do I really make good discerning decisions to do that? And you said something earlier about how does this, decision really like advance or kind of like serve others around me or something to that effect. And I think I've lived a lot of my life thinking about like this bigger, more macro outcome of things. Like I just want the world to be a better place. Like, and I don't apologize for that. Like I want like good conditions. I want good, stable home. I want all of these things, but I can't control those things. So how do I get back to like controlling what I can, saying no to things that don't serve, and really being intentional in my purpose? And that is like a really amazing place to to begin to be on. Like I'm
Sure.
just journeying
Sure.
on this.
Yeah.
And I've regressed several times.
Well, you will.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think, there's a reason that we use recovering as opposed to recovered, whether it's from people pleasing, it's from substance abuse, it's from whatever, right? Because like recovery is a process.
Yeah.
Right. And we know that relapse is can often be a part of recovery. And so giving yourself space to say like, I don't have to show up perfect every time.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think one of the best things people who are people pleasers who are often saying yes, one of the best things that they can do is to start taking inventory of how often they say yes when they want to say no, right? And then practice sort of softly saying no by saying, let me think about it, right? So you don't have to get everyone an answer right away, right?
Yeah.
And that let me think about it gives you space, right? To say like, do I have the capacity to do this? Do I have the interest in doing this? Right. Or do I not? Right. And just sort of like testing the water of like, what will happen if I say no? Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I just had a recent example of saying no that I'm pretty proud of myself for.
I love
it. Now my husband is like, he leads with no, which is like,
so is mine. It's annoying, isn't it?
How do you live? Like if everything's a no. But we were having this conversation. I was like, yeah, let's do this quick trip. Like it's easy. It'll be fun. We just, it's end of summer. Like, yes. And in the moment I'm like, yes. Right. And then as I went home and we slept on it and we were like, okay, well, honestly, we can't do this. But we already kind of said yes. So let's just try to figure it out and then get the text like, okay, let's talk about it. Are we doing it? And I'm just like, okay, I could probably keep going with it and we could figure it out, but really, no, I probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, as much as I want to, I just got to bow out of this one. Like I just can't, it doesn't make sense. We've got so much going on. And my thought process in saying no was like, oh, they're going to be so disappointed. And I know that they want to and then the response was like, okay, totally. And it's like, gosh, like, was it really that easy? This whole time I'm like, should I, could I, do I? And all the while it was like, nope, not a big deal. I'm going to do this anyway. So like, we're good. And so I think we have to know that it will be okay on the other side of no. Like it's not going to stop the world. It's not going to advance progress. We're not going to not be able to like still have friends. Like it will be okay. And I think we need to step into that.
Absolutely. And like, you mentioned like, these other people are going to be disappointed if I back out of this thing. And I think that is also a really good thing that we can do whenever we are standing in spaces where we're feeling guilty about the thing that we're saying, instead of owning the feeling and experience that we're having, right? Like to identify what we think someone else might feel by this decision, right? That like, I'm going to make this decision to prioritize myself and they might feel disappointed and that's okay.
And that's okay.
My job isn't to protect people from their own disappointment. Right. Like it just isn't.
That owning and responsibility is something that I learned recently. I may have shared, like my org did a huge shrinking and it was probably the hardest part of my career to date, to have to let go of so many people and all of them who have lives and the attachment that I had to them personally and professionally. I came home many nights and just like, I can't imagine like what they were going there to try to figure out their lives. But I know for me, just the burden of it. And I felt like I felt like I needed to own every single reason why. And there were some employees who were like, yeah, you should. This is all of your fault. Like you're the sole reason to blame. But there was this one board member that was like, yeah, you can be responsible for some of the things that happen, but you don't need to, nor should you own any of it because there are so many factors that contribute to this. And as a leader, we have a responsibility to like ensuring the best outcomes, but you also have a responsibility to seeing this organization through the hardest time that it's experiencing. You own that you can get us to the other side. Don't own the fact that you had to make these decisions. And I could not have felt more just relief around that for myself because the guilt and the disappointment and all the things was like all coming back up. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's happening again. But I realized like, no, I'm not the owner of this. In fact, these overly wealthy white men in America, okay, that's a little brash, but there's some truth to it. They're the reason they should own all of this. But all to say is I think that that's right. That is where we have got to step further in and be okay with that. So with that, as we are kind of winding out this segment and kind of getting here, like we've talked a lot about discernment and understanding like what that looks like. Some of it circled to like self-validation. And in every episode, I try to tell folks that we are not alone in this. Like every one of us is experiencing something and the process by which we get there is what we have to fully step into if we really want to get to the other side of healing. So closing out, like what would you offer to folks listening today? Something that would help them to just recognize you're not going to be healed or you're not going to arrive. But this journey that you're on, there's a lot of beautiful things that can come from it. And I just am curious what you would offer to folks in that.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is that there's no right way to do this, right? That you don't have to follow the timeline that anyone else creates around what it looks like, that like healing is this continuous process. And I think a lot of times we think about healing as like these big monumental shifts, and they're not. It's this really slow and gradual process that is sometimes full of setbacks or long pause. But I think as long as we can find a way to like experience our own truth and accept it for what it is, right? That we can, move through healing in a way that serves us and that ultimately is something that, makes our relationships and the world even, right? Like speaking of changing the world, right? A better space, right? To let people know that like, it's okay not to have it all together, right? It's okay to mess up and to be kind to yourself.
Well, you heard it here. It's okay to not be okay. We have to be kind and graceful with ourselves because we deserve it. This has been really incredible. So thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
Our first mental health therapist certified in 4 states was here today, giving us like some truths and some real ways of thinking about how we continue to journey unconventionally toward healing. I encourage you all to like and subscribe if you haven't already, share with a friend, but really have some honest conversations with yourself, interrogating what it is that is keeping you from decision making and really taking stock in how you process that. It may not be an action today, it may be an action in the future, but giving yourself that space to be able to do that. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.